Today, got a very special webinar, as they all are, but today we're going to be really talking about how to fire and wire in smooth speech or any other habit, actually, any other new pattern that you want to create, how to fire and wire that in to your brain. So just to let you know, everything you're going to hear today is based on neuroscience, habit formation. So it's science-based. Not only is it science-based, but we've been using it and testing it for more than a decade now. All right, and so we know that it works, but you can also go out and find out or find these same exact steps if you go out and do your research. So this stuff isn't just something that we came up with. It's not something that we made up. Every single step is based on science. Now, before we jump into that, I want to go ahead and share some things with you that I'm going to leave on the screen so that you can do this whenever you want. So some of you who are watching, you are going to want to get better results faster. And many of us, especially Farouk and I, know that the way to do this is just based on more than 10 years now of experience. For many of you, not for all of you, for many of you, the fastest way to get the best results is to work with us one-on-one. You get accountability so you stay on track. You get encouraged so you don't just say, this isn't working. And you get feedback and evaluation, which saves you time, right? So we can zero in and say, work on this now, work on this first. So some of you are going to want to work with myself or Farouk, and you'll see a couple of links up there. One is to book a call. That's directly with me. So when you click that link, you'll be booking a call with me. Later, Farouk will enter into the chat box a link to his coaching page where you can book a call with him if you'd like to work with him. On my coaching page, which you'll see where it says learn more about the coaching, you'll also find a link to Farouk's page. So you can get there that way if you want to learn more. Some of you have already looked at it and you're ready to get started, so you can just go directly to booking a call. Some of you have been with me for a while and you're just ready to enroll. So you can enroll for as long as we have seats open. And so you can just go ahead and click and enroll, and then we'll be in contact with you within about 24 to 48 hours to book our sessions. So you don't have to book a call to reserve your seat. You can just go ahead and pay for it, and then we will talk with you within 24 hours, as long as we have seats open. Okay. Now, some of you are not going to be ready for that at all, or you're not going to be able to afford it for one reason or another. And so we want to offer you a discount on our self-study, right? It's a very, very special discount offered through the webinar only. And so you'll see a link there to get that discount. If there's any problems with that, just email us, let us know, and we'll fix that. Okay. So that's that. Those links and or buttons will stay up on the screen so that you can tap into those whenever you like. Let's go ahead and jump into what we're going to be talking about today and why this is important. Some of you, if not all of you, may have taken programs before. You may be taking our program. You may even be coaching clients. And maybe you've been struggling to stay on track, or maybe you've not gotten the traction that you want. That is, you're not quite getting all of the results that you expected, that you want to. Or maybe you've done different programs and the results have been temporary, right? They haven't lasted, or you've reached a plateau. And so you find that you're still struggling, or maybe you're able to speak well in certain situations, but there's other ones where you're still struggling. Okay. So what we're going to be looking at today is how you can fire and wire in new speech patterns. Now, this also applies to new thinking patterns, okay? But we're basically going to be talking about speech patterns. Now, what do I mean when I say fire and wire in new speech patterns? So some of you, just go ahead and maybe type into the chat box what you think I mean when I say fire and wire in new speech patterns. as you're doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and begin to share with you what we mean when we say fire and wire. Fire and wire. So some of you have heard me talk about this. In fact, you can read all about it on our website, but there's something that's called Hebb's law, and it says that neurons that fire together wire together. Neurons that fire, that's a very, very simplistic explanation of what it is, but it's also pretty true, right? Neurons that, which is within our brains, that make up our brains, at least a large part of it, that fire together, wire together. So by firing together, what do we mean? We mean that whenever you are trying to develop a new way or pattern or habit, a new way of doing something, a new way of thinking, whatever it is going to be reflected in and managed by our brains, right? And so when you and I repeat a behavior over and over, what's happening, or at least a big part of what is happening, is you'll see, excuse me, you'll see the neurons or group of neurons in different parts of your brain that manage that activity, that manage those thoughts, or that manage that way of speaking. You'll see those neurons firing together. That is, they're communicating with each other. They're passing data back and forth. And so the more those same neurons fire in the same way, the more they do what we call wire together. That is, they establish a closer and closer relationship. So they wire together, just as if you were going to take two wires and twist the wires or whatever, weld them together, right? They wire together. So the more these neurons that say represent smooth speech, the more they communicate with each other, right, the tighter and closer their relationship becomes. What does that mean for you? What that means is that you are now able to speak smoother. So the more you practice smooth speech, and it doesn't matter the cause of stuttering, right, or the cause of fast speech, or the cause of feeling anxious, or the cause of getting nervous, doesn't matter. There have literally been people who've had strokes where there's brain damage, right? There's areas of the brain that's damaged that manage certain functions, how we walk or how we talk or whatever. And the brain, through neuroplasticity, is able to reconstitute, is able to recruit other areas of the brain to make up for, right? To compensate for the damaged areas. So for people who may stutter or stammer or speak too fast or struggle with this or that, you should have hope, because what we're saying is that our brains are able to compensate for that so that you actually can train yourself. You can fire and wire in a smoother way of speaking and a more confident way of thinking and feeling. You can do it. We've been doing it for decades, right? So you can do it. So the steps we're going to give you today is just going to walk you through how to do it. It's going to walk you through how to do it. So the firing and wiring is a process that, if you want to speak smoothly, and if you want to speak clearly, and if you want to feel and project greater confidence, so that when you speak, people actually listen to you, they want to listen to you, you can be more influential, more persuasive, you can feel calmer, right? You can feel better about yourself and about your speaking abilities. This is the way to do it. So let's take a look. Just going to share some slides with you. All right, hopefully you guys can see this. You can see this okay, right, Farouk? Yes? Okay, good. All right, so the first one is for you to set a clear goal. I'm going to rephrase some of these. You're going to pick a pattern. You're going to choose a speaking pattern that you want to follow. So that's like setting a clear goal. Because if you want to speak smoothly, well, what does smooth speech look like? It might be a little different for everyone. And that's the reason that we use something called what? Modeling, right? Modeling. Some people spell it with one L. You'll usually see me spell it with one. Some people spell it with two. Modeling. What's a model? Model is someone that's a pattern, right? You're looking at that thing or at that person, and they become your pattern, something that you want to mimic, to imitate, to copy. Modeling, believe it or not, is the fastest and easiest way to create new patterns, new speaking, as well as new thinking and feeling patterns. It's the easiest way because you don't have to build it and develop it from scratch. You can build on top of it and you can start from scratch. It's just going to be harder, right? So some people struggle to understand what modeling is. So over the next few days, we're going to be sending you some emails, not just talking about modeling, but talking about a few key steps that we discussed today, a few key steps with some examples. So I'll be sharing with you videos from some of our actual clients who talk about how modeling has helped them or how the routine or how something else has helped them, and you'll see it. We also have Farouk here, who I'm going to ask him just to say a little bit about some of these steps as well. But modeling is important because it's easy for you to kind of measure. You can say, okay, this is how this person speaks. Am I speaking like this person or not? Right. So you can kind of measure it, you can see it. It keeps you motivated. I picked two models when I stumbled upon this whole process. And I didn't do it necessarily so that I could overcome stuttering. I did it because I liked the way they spoke and I wanted to speak like them. So it just so happened that it helped me to overcome stuttering, right? Not that I don't have this fluencies, because I absolutely do, but guess what? So does everyone else. So by having these models, I was able to stay motivated. It kept me motivated, right? Because when I spoke like them, I felt excited. I felt more confident. I saw myself and heard myself speaking smoother by mimicking, by copying a model, right? And you have a better chance of success when you have a model. Now, if you don't have a model, then your progress is going to be slower, right? It's going to be slower, and it's kind of hard to keep focused on exactly what you're shooting for. What's the goal? If you have a model, it's very clear, I want to speak like this. Or there's some aspect of the way the person speaks that you can clearly see and shoot for that particular aspect or pattern of how they speak. So Farouk, do you want to share any of your thoughts or experiences on this? Because I know that this is pretty much what you did.
Yeah, sure. So I hope you're able to hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. So yes, obviously, we have always been speaking about modeling, and this is what makes the system quite unique, obviously, and this is the foundation of the system. Like modeling acts as a bridge from where you are right now to where you want to be. So it makes the process quite faster. It makes the whole process quite easier. It isn't quite easy at the start when you start doing the modeling, but it makes the whole process quite easier. So I actually modeled Michael for the language of English as well, and for my own language as well. So when you're modeling, it actually does not matter if you're modeling someone for your own language, if you're a female modeling a male, if you have a unique accent, whatever the case is. Modeling just means to actually make sure that you match the speaking style, the speaking rhythm, and the cadence of your model. The more you can speak like them, the more you can act like them, the more you can feel like them, the more you keep doing this by yourself over and over again, and the more you keep going out there and keep using it, the easier and easier it gets. And with modeling, just with modeling, you actually learn a bunch of speaking skills. So you're not just working on extending first, blending first, now you're focusing on this, now you're focusing on that. If you're modeling Michael, or if you have someone as a model who extends as well, who links his words as well, who inflects as well, who uses his facial expressions in a certain way, his hand gestures in a certain way. So you're learning a whole variety of skills just by modeling. So it makes the process quite easier and faster, and it is obviously the foundation of the system. So that is what I would like to add on that.
Very good. Thank you, Farouk. All right, so that's modeling. We're going to move to the next step. So step one is set a clear goal. More specifically is to pick a pattern of speech that you want to model. Okay. And our system is basically built off of that. And again, this is science based. It's pretty much proven that this works. So some say, that doesn't work. Remember this: your first language, and in some cases your second language, you learn by modeling. All babies learn most of what they do and how they behave from modeling. It's what we call observational learning. So when someone says, oh, that doesn't work, it has worked. But not only that, as adults, we model and we often don't know it. We've talked about this. We have something called mirror neurons. So we are often modeling people, which is why people say you have to watch the people that you hang around with, because you will inadvertently begin to pick up attitudes and behaviors and so forth without even knowing it. So modeling absolutely works. It does work, and it still is working. So never think, oh, this doesn't work. It does work. Okay. It's a very, very powerful tool. So the second one is to basically reduce the pattern down into specific or smaller parts. Break it down, break the pattern down. Now, Farouk just essentially shared with you several of our what we call proactive speaking skills. These are specific skills that you can learn, right, that will help you speak smoother and more clearly and more confidently. These are the same skills that people who are excellent speakers use. So they may have never stuttered, they may have never struggled with their speech, maybe they did. But if you see any speaker who's any good at all, and speakers can range, there are people who are more animated than me, right? They're blah, 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 they're going fast, they're great. I would probably look at them and go, wow, maybe I wish I could speak like that. But these can be excellent speakers, great speakers, more animated, less animated, right? Be calmer, still great speakers. You're going to see them use these skills. They're going to be using all these skills to one degree or another. So every person that you see who speaks well will be using these skills to one degree or another. Those are the proactive speaking skills that are in the course. It's in the system. So you'll learn them if you get the course, or if you work with us, you also get the course and you also learn them. But the beauty is that with these skills that you break down, we're equipped to help you focus on the one or two skills that's going to help you the most. Call this, we use kind of the 80-20 rule. What are the one or two things that can give you the most results the fastest? So the one or two skills that can get you 80% or more of your progress, of your results as quickly as possible. So because of our experience, we can look at you and go, focus on extending, or focus on blending, or focus on inflecting, or body language, right? Focus on this first, then we'll move to this, then we'll move to that. It's very hard for you to see that sometimes, but that's the way the system is built, and it works, and it gets you results quickly. So when you break the pattern down into smaller parts, it's easier to understand it. It's easier to practice it. You can focus on one thing at a time. It builds confidence because you're like, wow, okay, I've got this. I can do this. If you don't, then it can become overwhelming. So we do hear a lot of people when they first get into the system, oh my God, it's like 1,000 videos and 2,500 skills that we have to learn and stuff like that. No, that's not true. If you actually follow it, and you start at the top and don't jump around, you'll see where we're kind of building it up. And like Farouk said, when you model, you're actually learning all of this at the same time. You may not know it. You may not be focusing on all of the skills at the same time, but you're learning them. And that's why modeling is important, because even though you're learning all the skills at one time, we can help you say, okay, you're learning all these things, but we're going to focus, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, focus on this one skill or these two, right? And you're still practicing the modeling, so you're still getting the other skills, but you're focusing, and you see the benefits of focusing, right? Of breaking it down, in other words. you see the benefits of breaking it down. You get more traction. Okay, so that's breaking down the pattern. And the next one is to routine the pattern. That is, create a practice routine. Well, guess what? We actually have a routine for you. So we give you a routine and it's flexible. You can change it up if you want. You can change how much time you do. Here's something that I've been encouraging all of my coaching clients and even my self-study students is to spread out your practice time all throughout the day in smaller practice sessions. I kind of don't recommend that you save it up for one big time because often what happens is you don't feel like it or something else happens and you get busy so you end up not doing it. So practice in smaller chunks, smaller periods, smaller blocks of time throughout your day. And here's another tip. This is some research that's out there now, is you want to practice when you have more self-control, more willpower. That is, when you are the most energized. If you wait until the evening, now for me, evening time is pretty good for most things, or later in the morning or earlier in the afternoon. So you have to know your prime times, but you want to practice when you have more self-control, when you have more energy to focus on the steps that we just talked about, the individual parts that you've broken down. For example, extending your words, breathing and extending. When you have more self-control, that means that you are able to employ and engage your prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain. This is the control center. This is the brain that you and I use to make decisions, to make choices, to tell ourselves to do certain things. We also have something called the basal ganglia located right around the center of our brain that controls one thing that it does is it controls our habits, right? So you will find, you will have found, in fact, people say this all the time, well, when I'm in a meeting and I'm trying to focus on the content, on what I'm saying, or if I'm under pressure or something, everything that I've been practicing just goes out the window. Well, this is why. The reason is because it hasn't become a habit yet. Once you shift your focus, that is, once your prefrontal cortex shifts to something else, right, to the content, or maybe you get distracted by who's there, well, guess what takes over? Your basal ganglia, right? And that's what it's supposed to do. It takes over, and then you just repeat the same pattern, the same way of thinking, feeling, and speaking as you usually do, which is normal, as that's what's supposed to happen. So our system helps you create a practice routine where you can focus on one or two skills at a time, and you do it, not just practicing, again, we'll mention this in some other steps, but you practice it, you try to use it when you're the freshest, when you have the most self-control. That is, when you're able to consciously tell yourself to extend your words or to breathe. And yes, you have to trust that I can extend my words, or I can breathe, or I can do whatever. And at the same time, I can focus on the content. So as I can say what I want to say the way that I need to say it, right? You can say what you want, the way you want, especially when you're the freshest. Now, the longer you practice, the longer you're able to do that. And the faster, remember Hebb's law, firing and wiring, the more you do it, the sooner it gets moved into that basal ganglia, the sooner it becomes a habit and you don't have to think about it. So no, you don't have to think about the way you speak for the rest of your life. There may be times where you have to focus a little more, but for the most part, it becomes a habit because that's what your brain wants to do. All right. Now, Farouk, if you ever want to jump in on any of these, or, once I get to maybe number 4 or something, if there's anything that you want to say, just raise your hand and we'll let you jump in. Just trying to get through enough of these so that we have enough time to kind of answer questions or go back and review stuff. Okay. So creating a practice routine is very important, right? We give you one, but you can create your own. It helps you build the new skill consistently. It keeps you on track and organized so you're not all over the place. And again, you can adjust the routine. So without a practice routine, you're not going to get the same kind of progress that you would with the routine. And it's harder to stay committed. So that's why so many people who get into any program, any course, even ours, right? They get in. If you jump around, if you don't have a routine or if you don't follow the routine, then you get frustrated because it takes your brain a certain amount of time to grow, to wire in the new patterns, right? So if you're not consistent and if you don't have a routine and if you haven't broken it down and you're expecting to get really fast results and fast, consistent, lasting results, you're going to get frustrated and say, oh, this isn't working. Let me move on to something else. And you'll keep repeating that pattern for years and years and years, in and out of different programs, getting some results, then slipping back. And you go over here, get some fast results over here, then it slips back because it never got wired in. Farouk, you have anything to add to this one before we move to the next one, or what?
Yeah, something I think very, very short. You have just explained it very well. So I see working on your speech just like working on your physique. So if you're going into the gym and you want to see consistent amount of changes in your physique, then you have to be doing it every single day. So you have to make sure that you develop a consistent amount of routine with it. You also have to be pretty much aware of how much you're doing every day. But what I see is that even what's more important is that you do it every single day. So that is something that is more important. So for example, if you're going into the gym, one day you work out for 5 hours and the rest of the week you're not working out, that is where you're not going to get the results. But even if you're working half an hour or an hour, but you're working every day, that is where, as Michael said, you're firing those neurons over and over again, so that whenever you go out to speak, you would know that I have to use my new speaking style. And what happens is that the more you use your new speaking style right now, the less you would have to focus on using it in the future. For example, the way I'm speaking right now, the way Michael's speaking, we are not focused on extending, we are not focused on blending or modeling or something like that, because we kept doing that over and over again until it became a habit and until it got really programmed into our subconscious mind. So,
Exactly. So that's why, and I'll share with you one or two stories of a couple of people, Farouk being one of them, right? So he just shared with you, but uh, that's why it's important that you fire, meaning practice repeating. And again, we're going to get to that right now, so let me just get to it. All right, I'm gonna skip the slide and come back to this because I want to just rearrange this a little bit. Right, so we're going to do step 5 and then go back and do step 4. So engage in focused repetition. What does this mean? Well, this means it's not just repeating, right? Kind of in a sloppy, haphazard manner, repeating whatever you're doing, but it's focused. So you have picked a pattern, you've picked the kind of person that you want to model, you've picked the style, right? You've broken it down into some specific skills, or proactive speaking skills, and you've created a routine. And now you want to practice those specific things over and over and over again. The repetition represents firing. Okay, so let me say that again. So the reps equal the firing, right? And what does the firing equal? The firing equals the wiring. And what does that mean? The more you repeat, now if you repeat the wrong pattern over and over, you're going to wire in the wrong pattern or reinforce however you're speaking now, however you're thinking now. So we're not just talking about how we speak, we're also talking about how we think. So I'm putting together a little mini master course. It's just going to be a master course on anticipation. This is a huge challenge for people, but it's also a thinking pattern, so that whenever you have something coming up, if you find yourself worrying about it, negative anticipation, worrying about it, that's a thinking pattern. And because it's a pattern, it can be changed. It can be changed. So that's the good news. So the more you repeat something over and over, a certain way of speaking, a certain way of thinking, what you're actually doing is your neurons are firing together. The neurons that manage and represent that way of speaking or thinking are firing. That is, they're communicating, they're passing data back and forth. And there's something called myelination. Myelination. Myelin is kind of a fatty substance. Think of it like insulation that wraps the neurons, right? It wraps the neurons and insulates it so that the signal can pass at a more and more rapid rate, right? So you and I would experience this myelination as being fluent in something, being fluid, being able to do it easier, better, faster, quicker, right? Athletes do this. If you look at an athlete or at a musician, for example, there's certain parts of their brains that are more dense where the neurons have fired together, wired together, and are wrapped. They're thick with myelination. Why? Because they're so good at it that they don't have to think about it. And that's a reflection of them practicing that over and over and over again. So the more you practice, the more your brain automatically says, okay, this is something that we want to keep doing, that we want to get easy, that we want to make easy, that we want to get faster at. So we're going to have to insulate the signal so there's no signal leakage, right? We want to insulate the signal so that we can do this so fast and easy, we don't have to think about it. We don't have to use much energy to do it. That's why you feel tired when you're trying to learn something new, because you're using a lot of like physical energy, right, to wire that in. So it's very important to understand that when you engage in focused repetition, that is, I'm going to practice extending, I'm going to practice blending, I'm going to practice modeling. Practice this over and over and over, and I'm going to try to do it the right way. It's really a matter of trying. First, you're not going to do it the right way, but if you try and then you keep doing it, eventually you will. So strengthens the brain connections for the new habit, makes the skill more automatic. You've heard us talk about, and you can do your research, called automaticity, right? Automatic, and it increases your speaking proficiency, right? So it's, if you don't do it, then it's a less effective way of learning, and your pattern of speaking, or the pattern that you're trying to develop, is not formed as well as it would be if you focus your repetition. Okay, so that's important. Now we're going to go back. Visualization, a very, very powerful tool that accelerates the process of your learning something new, or learning a new habit or new pattern. When you can picture yourself using the new speaking style, you can even picture yourself practicing. Many, many studies done that have showed that there's a very small difference in improvement, believe it or not, in someone that, for example, practiced free flows physically, and someone that visualized themselves practicing free flows, like actually going through the motion. There's a very, very small percentage change or difference in the improvement of the person that just visualized it every day and the person that physically practiced it every day. That's extremely powerful and hopeful, because you can practice, you can visualize yourself speaking well, visualize yourself in a meeting, being calm, speaking smoothly, using good body language. And if you visualize it, you're activating the same neural network in your brain as if you were physically performing that act. Okay, so let me say that again. If you visualize yourself doing it, you're activating the same areas in your brain that manage that activity as if you were physically practicing it. This doesn't mean you shouldn't physically practice, because you should, but visualization kind of supercharges that process. So it creates mental connections for the new habit. Like I said, boost your confidence and motivations, picturing yourself, as opposed to worrying or anticipating a negative outcome. You're now positively anticipating, right, a positive outcome. Okay, so that's very, very powerful. So without visualization, learning is a bit slower, and you're not quite as prepared for real life situations as if you actually visualize yourself. All right. So the next one is feedback. This is where it's very important that you do a couple of things. Let's just say you're not able or not ready to work with us one-on-one. Well, one way you can get feedback is to record yourself. I ask my clients to record themselves in meetings, right? Just put their phone there and record themselves, and then take a look and see if you're actually doing what you thought you were doing. Because you may think you're doing something, but when someone else looks at that, or even when you look at it yourself, you're like, man, I wasn't doing that at all, right? So this is important. Now, where the coaching accelerates the process is, even if you look at yourself, sometimes you might think you're doing something. And as an expert, we can look at you and go, no, you actually have to do this. You actually have to go slower. You have to articulate like this. So that can save you a lot of time and a lot of money by getting that feedback, right? So you can ask others for thoughts. It's important because it helps you identify areas of improvement. It encourages you to adjust your practice routine. Maybe you have to focus a little more over here on this and less on that. And it supports, of course, your growth and development. If you don't get feedback, that is, if you don't evaluate yourself in as much as you can, or get evaluation from the outside, you're going to make slower progress, right? And you might even kind of ingrain mistakes, because you may think you're doing something and you may be practicing the wrong thing or practicing something the wrong way. So feedback, we call this evaluation and feedback. This can save you a lot of time. This can give you traction. You can feel motivated because you know you're moving in the right direction. And then finally, you're going to reinforce this new habit. Now, Farouk and I see this a lot. We see people who start getting results and then they slack off because they feel like, oh, I've got it. It's wired in. You have to keep reinforcing it. So how do you do that? Well, there's what we call formal practice and informal, or private practice and public practice. As you go through this process, the private practice or formal practice, you start to reduce that. It starts to become smaller. But your informal or public practice expands, meaning every time you open your mouth is practice time, right? Every time you open your mouth, you need to see it as practice. I think I talked about that in the last webinar that I did, or a video that I did. You see it always as practice, so that you're constantly firing and wiring in the new speaking style or the new thought pattern. And if you're doing that, then what happens is you're reinforcing the habit until it becomes a habit, a pattern, till it becomes automatic, until you reach automaticity. So you heard Farouk say earlier that he doesn't really have to think about how he's speaking right now. I don't have to really think about how I'm speaking, because it's a pattern now. It's been wired in, right? So the more you do it, the less you think about it, because it's the way our brains work. Your basal ganglia takes over. You don't have to think about it anymore. All right. So you want to keep practicing both formally for a while and then informally. So I told you about Dr. Ismail, and you'll see one or two videos from him, as well as one from Mona. And I'll talk about Dr. Ismail, and then we'll shift over to Farouk, because he's had the same experience. So I remember Dr. Ismail, who's a doctor. He's very, very busy. He has a family, he has a practice. So he's extremely busy. And he used to practice for hours, like just in between he would practice. And he would send me videos that weren't just 1 or 2 minutes, but would be 5 and 10 and 15 and 20-minute videos that he had modeled. He had literally memorized these videos, and he would send me these long videos of him modeling. I was like, where does this guy get the time and the energy to practice? But he kept doing it for several months. And what happened is, because of that, he was able to wire in, right, to fire and wire the new speaking style. But along with that formal practice, he started to take advantage of daily speaking. So he spoke up more, maybe made more phone calls, talked to more clients and patients, whereas before he might have been avoiding a little bit. But now he was embracing and creating. He started to get invited to radio shows, to conferences, and instead of saying no, because he's an expert in his field, right? Fetal surgery and so forth, he started going out and going to conferences, interviews, and people were saying, wow, you're an amazing speaker. You're an excellent speaker. And he never thought he would be there, but because of modeling and all the stuff that we just talked, he did everything we just talked about. He got to the place where now he's recognized and people are inviting him out to speak as a speaker. Okay. So this is important to reinforce it through practice, right? Private, informal, but also public. Get out there. You have to do it. If you practice by yourself, but you don't go out and apply it in real life, try to, then when you are faced with real life speaking situations, you will not be desensitized to that situation. Something we call desensitization, right? You have to desensitize yourself. I experience the same thing when I'm speaking Spanish. The more I go out, the more I speak Spanish, the more comfortable I become, calmer, confident, the more fluent I become. The less I do it, the less comfortable, calm, the less fluent I am. So you just got to get out there and do it and screw up. Like you're going to screw up. I screw up all the time. But the more I do it, the less I screw up, the smoother I speak. All right. So, Farouk, what say you about this or anything else that we've talked about? Maybe start off just a couple of minutes telling us about how modeling helped you in real life practice.
Mhm. I see that. So this is something that I've been sharing a lot in my sessions and in my webinars as well. So when I was doing the modeling, just like Michael gave you an example, same was the case with me, and same has been the case with many of the clients who saw amazing and excellent results in their speech. And that happens when you keep doing it over and over again, over and over again, the formal and the informal practices both. So you make sure that you work on your speech as much as you can when you're by yourself, and then you keep exposing yourself more. So there are some speaking situations where you have to speak. Then there also have to be some speaking situations that you create by yourself. So I can still remember that I used to make some random phone calls to my friends just to work on my speech. Now my friends used to think that I'm making phone calls to speak with them, but I was actually making phone calls to work on my speech. And that is where I kept working on the modeling. And I still remember I used to go onto my roof. I used to have walks, and while I was moving, I used to just keep practicing modeling. Okay, so let me speak about this, and let me try to speak like Michael. Let me speak about how my day went. Let me speak about some of my plans for the next week. Let me speak about what I did right, what I did wrong, and let me say it as if I'm Michael. So I kept doing it over and over again, over and over again. So first you have to make sure that you keep doing this stuff by yourself over and over again so that it gets easy. Then you have to make sure that you get yourself out more, you expose yourself in more and more speaking situations, consciously reminding yourself to use your new speaking style, as Michael said, in every single speaking situation. So you might find yourself in some situations where you might say that I'm at ease right now, I'm with my family, I'm feeling relaxed, so maybe I should not use my new speaking style. But that is not how it works. If you want it to get inside your subconscious mind, make sure to use it every time you speak. Now, there might be some times where you just get started speaking and you just realize that, hey, I'm using my old speaking style. Then you would have to get your mind back into towards the new speaking style. Then your mind might switch once again into the old speaking style. And then you would have to get it back to the new speaking style. So you might have to keep doing it over and over again until it starts becoming a habit, and until you see that I'm using my new speaking style for the whole time. So make sure to that every single time, no matter whatever the situation is. And the reason is that if you don't use it, if you don't use your new speaking style in low pressure, then it would be very high to use your new speaking style in high pressure. when you're giving a presentation, when you're in an interview, because you haven't been using it in low pressure. So first is doing the stuff by yourself, then moving to low pressure, then graduating to medium pressure, then moving up to high pressure, and making sure that you use it every single time. Even if you're experiencing the successes, that does not mean that it has become automatic yet. So keep doing the work even when you're experiencing the successes. So I used to do it a lot. Like I used to work on my speech for a while. My speech used to get very great, and then I felt like, oh, right now maybe I shouldn't do the work on my speech. I'm speaking well. Then I used to stop working, and then my speech used to slack off a bit because it had not become automatic yet. You can stop the work when it becomes automatic, and it's just a feeling that you get that my new speaking style has become automatic, because you know that whenever you go out to speak, your mind wants to use your new speaking style. It just uses it on its own because of the fact that you have been doing it for such a long time that it became a habit. As Michael just said, Michael, mind likes to make habits. It wants to get everything into the subconscious mind. And you would know that has happened when that is the speaking style that your mind is using every time you speak, and you are able to use it with ease. So that is actually how it works. You're going to have to spend time, you're going to have to do the work, and you might feel a bit uncomfortable, a bit weird using your new speaking style, especially at the start. Like I have seen that many of the clients say that I feel weird when I'm going slow, I feel weird when I'm modeling, I feel uncomfortable. But as Michael says, you should feel uncomfortable, you should feel weird, because if you're not feeling uncomfortable, if you're not feeling weird, it means that you're not using your new speaking style. So with you feeling a bit weird and a bit uncomfortable, it is showing you, it's a hint that you're actually doing the right things. It's not feeling weird because it is weird, it's just feeling weird because it's new. It's something that you have not been used to doing. If there is something else as well that you just start to do that you have not done in the past, you would feel a bit weird doing that. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, and then you just keep moving your way upwards. So that is what I had to add on, Michael, towards what you said.
Thank you so much, man. That was, I couldn't say it better myself. Yeah. So, all right, guys, listen. This is an opportunity now for you to ask us questions about the content from today, um, about the self-study itself. If you're thinking about getting into the self-study and you have questions about it, ask us about that. If you're thinking about working with us one-on-one, and you have questions about that, now virtually all your questions are going to be answered on the website. If you go to the website, pretty much we've answered everything there. But you may want some context, or you may have something specific that you want to ask us. Please go ahead and type that into the chat box. I'm just going to do a quick review because we have a few people that have joined us. Not to worry, you'll get the replay. But I'm just going to do a quick review. So the first thing that you want to do is to set a goal that is pick a speech pattern. If you want to fire and wire in a new speaking style, then you have to know what kind of style you want to wire in, right? So you have to pick it or set a clear goal. That's like setting a goal. This is how I want to speak. Then you want to break that pattern down. We've done that for you. Proactive speaking skills. They're all right there. These are skills that people who speak very well use. These are skills that make up the modeling style that we teach. They're skills that will help you speak smoother. So if you have trouble with running out of air, blocking, if you have trouble repeating, the skills that we teach you, the ones that you can actually break down, are going to help you get through that, along with the breathing and so forth. So you break it down, and then you create a practice routine. You routine it, right? You create a practice routine so that you can get traction and see progress, right? So that's organized and it's systematic. We've given you a routine, but it's flexible. You can flex it out. We recommend you don't wait to do your practices at just once a day or twice a day or after work. We recommend that you break it down into smaller blocks, smaller chunks, so that, first of all, it stays top of mind throughout your day. Second of all, you are guaranteed to have practiced if you break it down into smaller chunks and you do them throughout your day, as opposed to waiting and feeling tired or something else came up or whatever, which happens all the time. Trust me. The other thing is, you want to make sure that if you can, you front load your practices so that you're doing it when your brain is the freshest. That is when you have the most self-control, because when you are trying to learn and or use a new skill or a new pattern, it requires more mental effort, more energy, using your prefrontal cortex, which means you need to have more self-control to be able to say, this is what I'm going to do. If you're tired, you simply won't have the energy and it'll be more difficult for you to do it. We've seen people experience this. So front load, if you can, your practices, break them down into smaller sections, right? Next, use visualization techniques. You can actually picture yourself doing it, and this will kind of supercharge or accelerate your progress by visualizing yourself doing certain things. You don't even have to do it that long. You can take a minute or less to just picture yourself going into a meeting, breathing, pausing, speaking slowly, smiling, whatever it is, you can visualize yourself doing it. Engage in focused repetition. So this means that you take a skill, for example, and you focus and you practice that skill or those one or two skills, and then you go out and you use those skills. You practice when you're speaking on breathing and extending, or breathing and extending your words, right? Pausing, taking a breath, extending your word, or inflecting, whatever it is. You practice that both in private as well as in public. You have to get out, just like Farouk said. Practice that in public. Feedback. Record yourself in those meetings and those conversations whenever you can. You don't have to record the other person, just record yourself so that you can give yourself feedback. But remember, there are things that we can't see. We just can't see them, right? They're in our blind spots, and that's why it's important to get feedback from other people. We've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for over a decade now. I've had this business for even longer than that, but coaching more than a decade. Have over 45,000 students now, actually. Not coaching clients, students, thousands of coaching clients. So we have the experience to give you feedback that works, and it's customized and personalized for you. So get that feedback, and that will save you time and money. If you have interviews coming up, important meetings, important conversations, you don't want to keep presenting yourself as someone whose communication skills are not where they need to be. You may be more competent than most of the people around you, but if you're not able to communicate that or articulate that, you will see people bypass you in their career. You will hold yourself back because you'll be like, that requires me to speak or run these meetings or do this. I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I did that for many years. But guess what? Where are you going to be in 3 months from now? Right? Unless you do something different right now, I can guarantee you this isn't going to improve by itself. It almost can't. I'm not going to say it can't, but it almost can't, because of the process it takes to develop it, right? It's not going to do it on its own. So 3 months from now, if you don't do anything different, you're essentially going to be in the same place or worse. You will have lost opportunities. You'll still be struggling physically, emotionally, right? But that doesn't have to be the case, right? It's a matter of you're really investing in yourself. You're not investing in Pro 90D. In a sense, you are, right? You're helping us kind of continue to transform people's lives, but you're investing in yourself. And we have thousands, but we have lots of people who say, hey, I enrolled in the coaching or I bought the course and I got a job, making who knows how many times more than what they invested. Sometimes it's 10 times more or 5 times more, whatever it is, just like I'm talking about, sometimes within weeks or within a month or two, they got their investment back 10x or 2x or 3x, whatever it is. But that's just that one time they got their investment back. We're not even talking about the rest of their life, right? So strong communication skills, excellent communication skills last you a lifetime, and it's exponential, right? It's compounding. It builds on itself. So as you improve your speech, in let's just say 90 days, your speech improves dramatically. You go out, you get this job, you improve your speech and your skills, your reputation, then you're able to go out and get a better job or start your business over here. And then you're able to earn more and you feel better and you have a better reputation. And then you keep doing that, right? So not only did you get your investment back the first time, but you're getting it back, compounding and exponentially every year, right? I have clients who've already done this just within the last several months. They got this job, then they got this job, they got that job, just like that. So question is, where are you going to be in 90 days, right? Where are you going to be in 90 days? You can be where you are now or worse, or you could be looking back on, I'm glad I did that, man. I am super glad I did that. And then finally, I'm going to reinforce the new habit, like Farouk said, get out there, create opportunities, take advantage of opportunities and create them so that this becomes automatic, right? So it becomes a habit. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions? Let me just take a look and see what we've got here. Currently working on speech, self-study, yes, but I don't have access to the videos anymore. Okay, Vesta, I'm gonna see if you can send me an email, or if you're in Slack, send me a Slack message, and we'll make sure that you have access to the current platform, okay? All right. Any discount in self-study? Yes, actually, you should see right now that there's a link up there that is saving you $100 off the price of the self-study. And so you probably will want to take advantage of that now. That is a discount that we're offering now that you can take advantage of. Okay. Anything else? Anything else? Any other questions? All right. Farouk, do you have anything else for us?
Nothing much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just towards the end, I was just adding the point that I feel very happy to have faced, to have struggled with an opportunity to join the system, to work on my speech, and to speak the way I'm speaking otherwise. So this has, I would say, that life has given you amazing opportunity to work on your speech and to help you get even of the average person. You become an excellent and amazing. So that if you're working on your, why not to work on your speech to become an excellent and amazing speaker, to rise even above the average person, and all the stuttering, all the stammering just takes care of itself. So I was someone who used to struggle saying even a single at times. Like even a single word was a huge issue for me. I can, and you would keep these things in your mind, your speech, because it's never too late.
Very good. Yeah, we lost you a little bit, but we got most of that. What I'd like to ask you to do now is to go ahead and paste your coaching page link in the chat for us, okay? And then if any of you would like to speak directly with Farouk, set up an assessment session with him, you can go ahead and click that link. But the other links that I have on the page now, you can learn more about the coaching, and on that page, you'll see his link as well towards the bottom. If you want to work with me directly, you can book a session, or if you already are familiar with the coaching, you can just directly enroll. If you're not ready for coaching, do the self-study. If you're not able to do that, continue to take advantage of our free resources where you can learn a lot. But just remember, all the things we went through the day in terms of having a routine and all of that stuff is already baked in and built in to the system. So if you are able to invest, then you should do that, because otherwise you're literally going to be wasting a lot of time just watching videos, random videos here and there. Some people have to do that because they can't invest. That's a whole nother story. That's why we have a lot of great free stuff. If you can invest, then you probably should, because you're going to get traction, get better results faster. All right. Okay. If there's no other questions, then we will wrap up here and see you guys in the next webinar or videos. Remember, you're going to get some emails from me, one of which will have replay. You'll also be able to download the slides. I'm going to give you some examples of some of the steps that you see in this process. Okay. So we look forward to working with you soon in the future and look forward to seeing your speech improve over the next few months.